We have repeatedly touched on the subject of unique animals. Their evolution went at first glance in a very bizarre way. Such creatures began to appear almost from the moment of the birth of life. Probably, with the appearance of the very first single-celled organisms. Some of them developed according to their own standards. And, of course, all these oddities have always served the sole purpose of trying to better adapt to changes in the world around us. And some of the most famous creatures with unique abilities we will tell in a new cycle of our videos. And today we will talk about those animals that lived even before dinosaurs began to rule the world. By subscribing to our channel, you will be the first to know about the release of new issues and comment on their content. We also once again encourage our viewers to actively celebrate their favorite videos with likes. This contributes to their promotion through the platform algorithm and allows other science lovers to get acquainted with the Age of Dinosaurs channel. Tiktaalik is a fish with 4 legs. This creature was no longer completely fish. But it was very far from true amphibians. Living in the distant Devonian period off the coast of modern Canada and Greenland. At that time, there were shallow and rather warm seas in these places. Perhaps because of the abundance of vegetation. They resembled a swamp. The ancestors of Tiktaalik had to acquire powerful and long fins to make their way through these thickets. Tiktaalik itself, according to some scientists, was able to move on its fins along the coastal territories. In addition, he had both gills and lungs. This allowed it to spend extended periods on land. At the top of his large triangular head was a hole through which Tiktaalik could breathe atmospheric air without rising from the water. Despite the fact that Tiktaalik is classified as a clapstopper fish, it had a rather peculiar appearance. In length it exceeded 22.5 meters. It did not have a front dorsal fin, but the body was covered with scales. In the large mouth there were 2 rows of teeth. There was no connecting plate between the skull and the shoulder girdle. So Tiktaalik could move his head left and right regardless of the position of his torso. Artrap levra butterfly of the Carboniferous period is fascinating. Of course, in fact, the author of Lavrus was a giant centipede, and butterflies did not exist at that time. Artraplev's remains have been found in North America and Scotland. Their length, according to scientists, could be up to 2.5 meters due to the fact that the oral apparatus of these arthropods has not been found for a long time. It was believed that they were active predators. With such dimensions it is not surprising. But when analyzing one of the findings in the stomach, traces of plant food were found. This made it possible to assume that the author of the Pleura were inclined to a vegetarian menu. Also, some researchers have suggested that these centipedes performed the functions of modern butterflies and participated in the process of plant reproduction. When moving through the thickets, the Arthropleura shook off pollen, which was delayed in the joints of the scales of their articulated armor. Jelly caprion fish with a revolving jaw is intriguing. In 1897, near the city of Krasnofimsk in the deposits of the late Permian period, a strange spiral prominent structure was discovered. Explored by a geologist and paleontologist, Karpinski found out that the strange pointed growths on the spirals are teeth and belong to an unknown species of cartilaginous fish at the time. He suggested that this strange design was the upper jaw of the fish itself, was named Gilli caprion. This name comes from a combination of Greek words that can be translated as a circular saw. Subsequently, other remains of large prions and related fish have been found around the world. After their examination, the dental spiral was moved to the lower jaw. Although there is an opinion that it could be located inside the throat of the fish. It is believed that the teeth began to grow from the base of the spiral as new ones appeared. The old ones shifted and gradually lost. How was this circular saw actually used? Not yet fully understood. Some scientists even suggest that it could actually rotate to a certain extent, sawing through the tentacles or shells of mollusks, as well as applying seriousness on fish and other marine animals. There is also an opinion that the Delicaprions with its help sifted the natural silt of more complete finds that can shed light on this problem. Scientists are not available. There are also no other living organisms with a similar structure of the oral apparatus. So while this is a mystery, remains unsolved. Cornu-Sex two-legged crocodile. Although this crocodilomorph lived in North America at the end of the Triassic period and was the same age as the first dinosaurs, we can't help but include it in this issue. Several scattered bones of this distant relative of modern crocodiles were found in North Carolina almost 20 years ago. When described, he received the species name, meaning Carolinian butcher. The length of its body is estimated at almost 3 meters, and the height is 1.5. At the same time, it is believed that he found the skeleton belonged to not quite an adult individual. The uniqueness of this morpho-crocodile was that it most likely moved exclusively on its hind limbs. Its forepaws were much shorter, although no evidence of Cornu-Sex's bloodlust has been found. Scientists have no bones with traces of its bites or the fossilized remains of its stomach contents. The travel mode of this creature was advanced for its time. It's unsurprising that after the extinction of these two-legged crocodiles, two-legged dinosaurs, like pteropods, rose as dominant predators. Don Cleostrae is a monster fish with a toothless mouth about 360–380 million years ago in the Devonian period. This shelled fish was the main predator of the planet. Its length could reach 10 meters and the mass of 1 ton. The huge head was covered with armor plates and equipped with a terrifying mouth. This mouth also consisted of bone plates and was more like a beak. Instead of teeth, it still had the same rigid plates. But even with such a primitive oral apparatus, Dunkleosteus could not worry, but that someone in the ocean will be beyond his teeth. The force of the bite of his jaws, according to the calculations of scientists, was simply monstrous. Even modern crocodiles can't match its biting speed. And in the seas of the Devonian period mainly lived mollusks and ammonites. Their shells were easily broken by the jaws. And even the sharks that appeared at that time could not compete with this live torpedo. Their dunk could snap in half without much effort. The only creature that could harm this fish was another, larger Doncleasta. The woolly lizard of the Permian period. The Permian period was the age of lizards. At this time, a large number of creatures appeared that had many features of modern mammals, but had not yet lost some of the features of reptiles. One of these animals was a cynonat. It was a large animal for its time. The length of his body could exceed 1 meter. At the same time, almost a third of this size fell on the head with a toothed mouth. Their upper jaw was adorned with powerful saber-shaped fangs. Also, almost these lizards had primitive molars. It is thanks to this structure of the oral apparatus that Cynonata got its name. Literally, but translated as a dog's jaw, hind paws. The price of the gnat was located under the body like mammals, and its front limbs were still arranged to the sides like those of reptiles. Pomegranate scientist observed differentiation of teeth as in modern mammals. Studies of fossilized skin impressions of the coenignates show that their entire body was covered with fur. It is also possible that on their face there were sensitive hairs and vibrissae, forming a semblance of mustaches. Megabite poisonous bear of the Permian period. The presence of poisonous glands among modern mammals is a great rarity, and the developed apparatus for injecting toxins into the body of the victim of vertebrate animals could create only reptiles. But since the synopsids of the late Permian period can be fully considered a transitional form, among them were animals that supposedly possessed a poisonous bite. A megabite of this is known from only one upper jawbone and several other scattered bones found in the Nizhny Novgorod and Vladimir regions of Russia. Initially, the finds were attributed to one of the species of Sid gorgons. But with a more detailed study, it became clear that scientists managed to discover a new predatory beast lizard in size megawati approximately corresponded to modern bears, only her head and. Accordingly, the jaws were larger in relation to the size of the body. But most of all, scientists attracted the structure of the fangs of this formidable predator. First, they were triple and grew from a common alveolar sac. And inside the fangs there were separate channels, which supposedly led to glands that produce poisonous toxin. So far it is impossible to confirm or refute this hypothesis due to the insufficient amount of materials. But if it is proven that you did not speak and killed or immobilized the victim with poison, then it will remain the most ancient, poisonous vertebrate in history. Meta. A variety of unique species of animals that inhabited our planet enemy time. It does not permit us to cover all of them in one video. The history of evolution indicates not all these traits enabled living organisms to adapt successfully to changing existence conditions. However, the presence of such peculiar deviations enabled us to survive and develop further. In fact, the entire history of life from the simplest single-celled mammals to highly developed mammals boils down to the fact that certain unique features of different species contributed to their further development and prosperity. Dinosaurs reigned on our planet for almost 200 million years. During this time, a huge number of species of these amazing creatures appeared and disappeared. Some of them in the course of evolution acquired unique abilities and acquired unusual external attributes. The purpose of some of them still remains a mystery to scientists. In this episode, we will reveal who are the unusual, mysterious animals. The age of dinosaurs. Some of them have already been mentioned in our previous editions, and others we will tell for the first time. Subscribe to our channel. It's a genuine action that allows you to be the first to learn about new video releases. We also urge our subscribers and viewers to comment actively and like the videos they enjoy. This way, you can aid in the channel Euro's growth and promotion so other science enthusiasts can discover it. The Fearsome case involved a lizard with heightened survivability that couldn't spit poison. In part 1 of the film franchise and Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park, the audience was presented with a very strange dinosaur of small size, capable of spitting poison several meters. This creature was claimed to be Dilophosaur. But, unfortunately, such appearance and unique abilities of this predatory dinosaur turned out to be an invention of the authors. Writer Michael Crichton, who created this book series, decided that the genes of one of the poisonous frogs were used in restoring DNA to this species. He also gave this dinosaur a chic leather collar. In this form, now models of Dilophosaur are exhibited even in theme parks. Movable figures of dinosaurs. And as an additional attraction, he pours passing tourists with water from his mouth. In reality, the case of the Physosaurus was completely different. They lived in the United States and possibly China between 182 and 200 million years ago. The Prehistoric case got its name from a pair of small ridges on its head. They were one of the biggest predators of their time. Their length was about 7 meters, and the height exceeded 2 meters. They weighed up to 400 kilograms. But still their superpower in these lizards was revealed as a result. Traces were found on one of the skeletons found. Do you have families who have healed injuries? This indicates the amazing survivability and high regeneration rate of this species. Thanks to these abilities, Dilophosaurus is listed in the Guinness Book of Records as the dinosaur with the most injuries. Natosaurs aren't true lizards, living like seals. The name of these reptiles, which lived almost all over the world, approximately 240 million years ago, translates as false lizards. In fact, they occupied the lowest modern pinnipeds. And partly also crocodiles and turtles. It is believed that one group of natosaurs became the ancestors of the already fully introduced plesiosaurs. On average, natosaurs had a length of 304 meters. But there were specimens reaching 6 to 7 meters. These were semi-aquatic animals, perfectly adapted for hunting fish and other marine life. Their paws were equipped with membranes. Special natosaurs had a pointed shape. Their mouth formed a kind of trap for prey. But they reproduced. Animal on land, there is an assumption that they laid eggs in the coastal sand, similar to modern turtles. The Eryctodrome rabbit, dating back to the Cretaceous period. This species was the first described dinosaur inclined to conform to norms. The fact is that in the United States, 3 individuals were discovered buried under a layer of earth. A more detailed study of the remains suggested that they died as a result of the collapse of their own bed. The dimensions of the underground chambers of their passages corresponded to the dimensions of an adult Eryctodromeus. These were small ornithopans. The length of their body slightly exceeded 2 meters. They weighed approximately 20 to 30 kilograms, their holes had. They also had side tunnels that were dug by animals. Symbionts, that is. Smaller creatures that used alien flocks for safety and ate the remains of the lizard's meal. Moreover, these, undoubtedly, predatory dinosaurs did not have pronounced adaptations for digging the earth. Their forelegs were not very thick. Scientists assume that they obtained food due to the speed of running. And the bulky front paws would only hinder them from doing so. Approximately, this concept is also implemented in modern rabbits. They also live in burrows, but at the same time do not have such paws as, for example, a mole. Chow Ya but Zavar I in history adored nuts and seeds. Discovered at the end of the 20th century. A small dinosaur from China may well be the ancestors of all ceratops. And the giant descendants of Chayanosaurus, who lived at the end of the Jurassic period, are not at all similar to him. The weight of this dinosaur was no more than 20 kilograms. The body length was 110, and the height was 70 centimeters. Presumably, it was a herd herbivore, moving on 2 legs. It did not yet have an impressive protective collar and long horns. Their place was occupied by small growths in the area of the back of the head. But Very-She-Fence became the earliest known dinosaur with a beak. Scientists associate the presence of this tool with the appearance of the first nuts and other seeds in a hard shell. It turns out that these dinosaurs had at that time a unique ability to click seeds and nuts. Pagama's tax is a cross between a parrot and a wild brass with a built-in tooth sharpener. What strange dinosaurs has nature not created during their 200 million years of domination? But PegaMG will be able to confidently claim to be the creature of the most amazing appearance. Its head ended in a short beak and resembled the head of a modern parrot. At the same time, the body of this small ornithite pod was covered either thin needles or long dense hairs. They may have served as protection against predators. Lived this dinosaur on the territory of South America about 200 million years ago. It weighed no more than 3.4 kilograms and had a body length of about 60 centimeters. One of the most interesting external features of Pegamax was the 4 long fangs sticking out of its mouth. At the same time, the dinosaur itself was a herbivore, and the fangs, most likely, served him to dig roots or cut the shoots of plants. These fangs were so arranged relative to each other that when closing the mouth they sharpened themselves. Linhai nikos was an anteater dinosaur who destroyed termite mounds with one finger. The small size of the forelimbs of large predatory pteropods has long been the subject of memes. But the hands of Axe and Cornitoris look normal compared to what Linhicus had turned into. Although we can say that this dinosaur went about it consciously. It lived in China about 83 million years ago and belonged to the family Alvarosaurus. The length of his body barely reached 50 centimeters. And the whole he is no more than 500 grams. This baby ate various insects and termites. As a result of this diet, he was forced to learn how to effectively destroy termite mounds and open the thick bark of trees. To do this, Linchonychus's hands lost most of their bones. In fact, instead of hands, he was left with one single finger, which completely turned into a claw. Chaos shipped duck sweets instead of wings. Around 2010, private collections were illegally mined in the Mongolian part of the Gobi Desert samples of the bones of an unknown dinosaur. Scientists were able to study them only a few years later. This species is named after the Polish paleontologist Halski Osmalskaya. She was one of the greatest experts on Mongolian dinosaurs. In the hands of researchers got almost completely preserved skeleton of this small dinosaur. This led to the conclusion that Carter's house occupied a rather specific ecological niche. It was a semi-aquatic fish-eating dinosaur diver in size. Holska was comparable to modern ducks. It had a streamlined body and a long gooseneck. In its mouth was a set of sharp, slightly curved teeth designed for catching aquatic creatures. There is an opinion that it could dive for prey to great depths, as do modern penguins. Simultaneously, House Carter's hind legs were quite long and thin. This suggests that even on land the dinosaur moved very fast. Leave the shore forever for him was not possible, because, like other dinosaurs, he laid eggs. So the house carp acquired a unique feature for dinosaurs. For ease of swimming, he grew webs on his forepaws and used them in the water. Niger fencesaurus had replaceable sets of teeth. About 110 million years ago on the territory of modern Nigeria lived quite unusual lizard. The dinosaur with the largest number of teeth, Nigersaurus, was discovered more than 50 years ago. But a more detailed description of this species appeared only in the late 90s of the last century, when more samples appeared for study. It was a classic four-legged herbivorous dinosaur with a long neck. The length was about 9 meters. And the mass up to 4 tons compared to its relative sauropods Negersaurus was quite small. But it distinguished some unique features. First, its jaw was located across the head and was much wider than the frontal part of the skull. Secondly, the teeth of this dinosaur were placed in a kind of battery. Behind each of the front teeth there were 9 more spare ones. As the teeth matured and washed, the Niger replaced them with new ones. His upper jaw included 68 and his lower jaw 60 such columns of teeth. Such designs are also known among hadrosaurs and ceratovans. But not a power throughout his life used more than drinking hundreds of active and replaceable teeth. This makes it the record holder not only among dinosaurs, but possible among all other animals. Videos released on the Age of Dinosaurs channel. We never tire of being surprised. The diversity of living organisms that inhabited our planet at different times. In the next issue of the cycle about animals with unique skills and appearance features. Let's talk about those who came after the dinosaurs. We will also talk about modern animals whose descendants survived the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction and successfully exist to this day. Of course, as always, the timing of our release together is only a small number of them. But if viewers like this format, then we will continue to talk about animals with superpowers in the future. By subscribing to our channel, you will be the first to find out about the progress of new issues and leave your comments under the videos you like. Also, our viewers can express support for the creators of the channel using likes. These actions will help promote videos according to the platform's algorithms. And the creators of the channel will be able to evaluate the audience's opinion on the proposed topics and plan their further work. D-Decor Armored Knights Field Station, New Period. At one time, stegosaurs and ankylosaurs came up with special protection from predators. Apparently, the presence of strong back armor and a mace on the tail was a fairly effective way to fight toothed monsters. The mammals that took over the planet after the disappearance of the dinosaurs also decided to use similar methods. One of the prominent representatives of such armored herbivores was the Didicur or Didicurus. It was a huge battleship weighing up to 1.5 tons and reaching a length of 4 meters. These giants lived mainly in South and Central America. The last representatives of this family found the first people settling in their habitats about 10–11,000 years ago. Their bodies were covered with impenetrable armor on top. And at the end of their tails was a spiked mace. Rather resembles a medieval hexaphora. But the scientists who discovered this creature gave it a name meaning the tail of the pestle, implying its similarity to the corresponding part of the flower. A walking whale that heard without ears. This animal, which inhabited the Middle East forwards from 41 to 47 million years ago, is considered a transitional form from land creatures to modern cetaceans. Outwardly, the ambulocytes resembled a bizarre cross between a dolphin and a crocodile. Their bodies were covered with fur, and between their fingers there were membranes in length. They reached 3 meters and all sat about 300 kilograms. These were predatory animals that attacked their prey by jumping out of the water, as do modern crocodiles, and lived both near rivers and on seacoasts. It is believed that they swam, bending their bodies in a vertical plane. Like modern whales. Look. These animals moved awkwardly enough. Scientists also suggest that for the birth and cultivation of offspring they moved from the seas to rivers. One of the most unique features of ambulocets was the device of their hearing aid. They no longer had auricles, so they could not perceive the vibrations of the air caused by sound waves. It is believed that the vibrations of the environment were transmitted by the bones of the skull. The force was a ravenous saber-toothed tiger. Despite their saber teeth, these inhabitants of South America from the late Miocene and early Pliocene were not feline, but marsupial. At the same time, Telekosmal had many features of saber-toothed cats. They had a length of up to 140 centimeters excluding the tail and a height of up to 60 centimeters. They weighed, according to various estimates, from 55 to 110 kilograms. According to these parameters, they can be compared with the modern inhabitants of this area. Jaguars Zelekosmila were squat, had a long and powerful neck, but it is believed that they were quite slow animals. Low speed did not allow them to hunt hoofed animals effectively. Their prey, most likely, was also not fast, which means well protected. It was precisely for hunting such animals that long saber-shaped claws were needed. And the roots of the fangs of the Chelacosmil much exceeded the length of the roots of the fangs of the Megalodons. This structure of the teeth of the maxillary apparatus left very little room for the brain. Therefore, the indicator saber-toothed cats were clearly ahead of their marsupial imitator. The rest of the teeth of Telekosmal were developed very poorly and did not have the ability to recover. Over time, they were almost completely washed away. Some researchers suggest that this was the reason for their short lifespans. Adult animals could not properly carve their prey and simply starved to death. At the moment, the animals described above are extinct. But even now on our planet lives a huge number of creatures with unique skills. The format of our issue does not allow for a detailed description of their abilities. Therefore, we will try to briefly talk about as many of them as possible. It is an animal that lives on both American continents. In case of danger, he sprays his own blood on the enemy. Her blood contains a dangerous toxin. The lizard gets it from the ants it eats. It is believed that as a weapon it can use up to a third of its blood supply without significant danger to its health. But the most amazing thing is that a jet of caustic blood shoots at the enemy from the eyes of the animal. Small jellyfish that have spread from the Caribbean to virtually all over the planet are technically immortal after being injured, exposed to adverse conditions, or simply reaching maturity. These creatures, no more than 5 millimeters in size, attach to the bottom or other surfaces and turn into a polyp. While in this state, the cells of her body are renewed. After that, it came back. The immortal jellyfish can exist again in its original form. And it can reproduce in both states. In the form of a jellyfish it reproduces sexually. And in the form of a polyp it buds. Modern centipedes are much smaller in size than the Carboniferous Arthur. Therefore, many of them are poisonous toxins, necessary for centipedes to protect against predators. Some species of centipedes are capable of releasing poisons from the cyanide group. For example, the dragon centipede from Southeast Asia not only accumulates poison in large doses, but also smells like almonds. This smell is just typical of this type of toxin. and Polychroma aphiloria. Recently discovered in the forest mountains in Virginia with shish. And even knows how to spray poison around itself. It is believed that the poisonous substance in the body of one centipede is enough to kill 18 birds the size of a pigeon. Like many poisonous creatures, these centipedes are very brightly colored, and some of them poisonous relatives diligently copy their coloring for self-protection. In the jungles of Southeast Asia lives an ordinary, decorated snake. If the word decorated can still characterize this animal, then the concept ordinary does not apply to it in any way. The fact is that this snake, unlike most of its relatives, knows how to fly. Scientific research has shown that it is able without much difficulty to plan from a height of more than 40 meters. That is, from a 12-story building for flight. This type of snake has learned to straighten the ribs and use them as a kind of wing. Bedbugs have a rather strange, but effective method of reproduction. To fertilize the female. Males of these small parasites do not have to get into the genitals in a certain place. He pokes it pretty much wherever it goes and just drills the body of the female, injecting his seed right into the blood. In this case, a female fertilized in this way does not necessarily immediately lay eggs. She is able to choose the most favorable time to get pregnant herself. And in the future she will not need to resort again. For this purpose, the male can also contain genetic material from different males in the body of the female. And even if a male in the process of fertilization got his genital organ into the body of another male, he automatically changes his sex and continues to live as a female. In Central Africa, there is a unique animal called the hairy frog. But it is notable not only for the thinnest skin processes on the sides of the body, resembling hair. It is believed that this tool is necessary for frogs to breathe. With them, they trap air bubbles in the water. The real superpower of the hairy frog, which would envy even some comic book heroes, is a way to protect against enemies in the moment of danger of the bones of the back. The legs of the frog break and cut through the skin with such sharp claws you can simply scare the predator without resorting to a fight. Avoiding danger, the frog retracts its claws and splices them quickly enough, as well. Walking kosha, you agree? This is very similar to the skill of one superhero from the Marvel Universe. A small shrimp named Cancer. The clicker has an average length of about 5 centimeters. While one of its claws is much larger than the other and can exceed the size of the body of its owner. This claw closes so quickly that it forms a bubble of air heated to more than 4,000 degrees Celsius and flying at a speed of about 100 kilometers per hour. Bursting into such bubbles, they make a very loud sound that can stun and even kill the small fish that this crustacean hunts. Under certain conditions, crayfish can cause serious injury even to humans. But to do this, the person must be in the water a few centimeters away from him. Fortunately, no such cases have been reported so far. True, there are unconfirmed stories of minor bleeding from the finger due to the attack from this tiny arthropod creature. We express our deepest gratitude to all viewers who stayed with us until the conclusion of this episode. For those interested in more insights into unique animals from various eras, we encourage you to review the earlier videos available on our channel. Moreover, they discuss the evolution of life on Earth, the advent and progress of humanity, its interaction with the environment, as well as the internal challenges faced by human society.